My fiancé introduced me to his mistress before the wedding and told her he was marrying for the inheritance. 500 million in family wineries that would only be released after 5 years of marriage with children. So when he became affectionate with Jessica at our wedding, I didn't mind. I just said I was tired and needed to rest. Somehow, he thought I was insinuating that I wanted to sleep with him right there on the dance floor. Ryan's face turned serious. "I won't touch you," he said dryly. "I never asked you to," I replied. "I said I'm dying of sleep. Do you know the difference?" I rolled my eyes. "Of course I know the difference." "It seems like you don't," he muttered. I huffed and let go of his hand. He let it go when the music changed and the crowd applauded, everyone switching partners. Ryan ended up dancing with his mother, who seemed delighted. "Take good care of my precious daughter-in-law," she smiled. "She speaks very well of you. Says you've been wonderful to her." "Really?" Ryan seemed surprised. "Never hurt her. If she comes crying to me—" "Mom, please," he interrupted, laughing. She hugged him and they shared a laugh. Later, Ryan's father called him over. He joined him and my father, Mr. Vasquez, and they all talked about how stunning I looked on the dance floor. Ryan pretended to care while looking at me sideways. "She's a great actress," he thought. But actually, his eyes were fixed on Jessica, his girlfriend, dancing with a stranger, and it killed him not being able to prevent it. When we arrived at the honeymoon suite, Ryan was already plotting how to see Jessica. He had arranged everything so she would arrive before him. Upon arrival, the driver brought a box for me. Ryan pretended not to know what it was, but he knew. He had heard me talking to my best friend. It was a gift, a box full of lingerie. Ryan couldn't help thinking how contradictory I was. I showed myself so distant at the wedding, and yet this box sent a completely different message. He had already planned to reject me that night, and just the idea excited him. I walked forward without looking back. I focused on talking to the housekeeper, hoping she would show me a room where I could actually sleep. When I repeated the word sleep with extra emphasis, Ryan let out a low laugh. What a hypocrite, he thought. He only wanted me around, especially because, surprisingly, I was still a virgin. It still amazed him how easy it was for me to make any man desire me. Well, any man except him. Once upstairs, Ryan instructed the housekeeper, who secretly took care of Jessica, to take her to his room. I went in the opposite direction. Ryan reached his room. He licked his lips. He already imagined who was waiting for him inside. He barely entered and closed the door. Jessica was on the bed. Her silk robe left little to the imagination. "Finally, I have you all to myself," she whispered, getting up and letting the robe fall. Her lingerie was seductive, and Ryan pulled her to him, kissing her roughly and hungrily. It had nothing to do with the forced kiss from the wedding that he gave me, but then he remembered my lingerie box. He imagined me wearing one, waiting for him. The idea of rejecting me to my face lit something inside him. It was his moment to get revenge on me. "Darling, wait for me here." He pulled away, his lips stained with Jessica's lipstick. "What's wrong?" she asked, slowly unbuttoning his shirt, teasing him with each caress. "I'll be right back. I just need to make sure Helena knows she won't have me tonight or ever." "I love when you say that," Jessica whispered. "But hurry. I'm already dying for you." Ryan smiled, biting his lip with excitement. Eager to return to her, he hurried. He wiped off the lipstick on the way before knocking on my door. I took a while to open. He imagined I was fixing my makeup. But when I finally opened the door, Ryan stood there, watching me from top to bottom. I opened the door slowly, unhurried, without nerves. I knew who was on the other side. Ryan, my husband. What an ironic word. I found him standing there, with his hand still raised as if he were about to knock again. His gaze traveled over my body slowly from top to bottom, as if searching for something, or as if he couldn't believe what he saw. I had put on a simple outfit. None of the lace lingerie my best friend had chosen for me. Just a long white satin robe that covered me to my ankles and loose, slightly wavy hair. Not a drop of makeup. Nothing suggestive. Nothing vulnerable. Nothing he could misinterpret. But even so, he looked at me as if I didn't fit into his schemes. "Do you want something?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe, crossing my arms over my chest. Ryan narrowed his eyes. His jaw, strong and defined, tensed. He had perfectly styled dark brown hair, but his unbuttoned shirt and the slight lipstick stain on his neck didn't go unnoticed by me. "Jessica," as if I needed more proof. "I just came to make sure you were okay." But his voice sounded forced, as if he were swallowing something else. I laughed without humor. "I'm perfect. Unlike you, I have nothing to hide." He remained silent, but his blue eyes, cold as ice, didn't move away from mine. There was something more behind this visit. It wasn't concern. It was control. It was territory. It was him reminding me that this marriage, was a power game. I decided to play along with his game. "Do you want to come in?" I asked, opening the door a little more, just to provoke him. I saw how his throat moved when he swallowed hard. He stood there hesitating. He didn't expect this. He supposed he would find me desperate, made up, dressed in lace, begging for his attention. Pathetic, isn't it? His voice sounded dry, but I noticed the crack, the discomfort. "I just came to make things clear." "Clear?" I nodded, feigning a sweet smile. "Make them clear, Ryan. What exactly?" He took a step closer. I smelled his expensive cologne, woody, mixed with a sweet trail that didn't belong to me. "That you won't have me tonight or any other night." I shrugged, containing the laughter that rose to my lips. "Wow, thank you for the warning. It saves me the disappointment of having to reject your charms." For the first time, I saw him hesitate. His eyes studied me, looking for sarcasm, humiliation, resentment. He found nothing, just my indifference. The silence stretched. Then he stepped back, adjusting his shirt. "Good night, Helena. Good night, Ryan." And I closed the door in his face. Slowly, softly, without a dramatic slam. That would have implied that I cared. I leaned my back against the wood, letting out the air. My legs trembled a little. But not because of him. Because of everything. Because of what had just begun. Because in this game, Ryan Montenegro had underestimated the girl who married for money. And that was going to cost him dearly. I took off the robe. I got into bed, and for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. But not out of ignorance. Out of strategy. He didn't know, but I was Helena Vasquez, daughter of the former owners of Vasquez Winery, which the Montenegro family deliberately destroyed 15 years ago, driving my parents to bankruptcy, and the alcoholism that killed them. I had spent years preparing, studying wines, becoming a sommelier, building an impeccable reputation in the sector. All to get here. To him. Ryan Montenegro thought he was buying a wife. Actually, he had married his revenge. The sun filtered through the thick curtains when I opened my eyes. I wasn't used to beds so big or hotel rooms so cold. I felt like I was in a crystal cage, surrounded by luxury but alone. The bridal suite was impeccable. The lingerie box remained untouched on the chair. I didn't even touch it. What irony. To think that someone at some point believed this night would be consummated like in fairy tales. What idiots. I got out of bed, fixed my hair, and dressed in an elegant but sober outfit. Black pants, white silk blouse, and pearl gray blazer. I didn't need stiletto heels or ostentatious jewelry to appear confident. My presence was enough. I went down to the main hall of the hotel, where a private breakfast was offered for the family and close guests. The scene was worthy of a movie. Tables decorated with fresh flowers, gleaming silverware, impeccable waiters. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Montenegro, smiled radiantly, talking with the guests. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Helena, dear," she got up, taking my hands in hers. "You slept well, didn't you?" I lied easily. "Perfectly. Thank you for everything." The wedding was unforgettable. Ryan, sitting at the end of the table with his air of studied arrogance. Today he wore a navy blue suit, white shirt, and dark gray tie. Impeccable. His dark hair, perfectly styled. There was no trace of Jessica or the lipstick on his neck. Just his gaze, as cutting as always. I sat next to him, feigning normalcy. The tension floated between us, invisible to others. During breakfast, the compliments didn't stop. What a beautiful couple we were. What a successful wedding. What a bright future we had. Ryan smiled, nodding, saying the right things. So did I. Professional actors. Until he arrived. Marcus. Tall, light brown hair, green eyes, marked jaw. About 30-something years old. His fitted black suit highlighted his confident and elegant bearing. He walked to our table with a calm smile and a coffee cup in his hand. "May I?" he asked, looking directly at me. Ryan barely raised an eyebrow, annoyed, but my mother-in-law invited him enthusiastically. Marcus sat in front of me, and for a second I felt the air change. "Helena, right? I'm Marcus Medici. I work with the Montenegro family in the wine area." I knew. I had heard his name. Investor, wine specialist, rich, and from what I could see, charming. "Pleasure," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his gaze different. There was no pity, no judgment, no evident ulterior motives, just genuine curiosity. "I saw your knowledge about wines yesterday." "Impressive," he smiled. Ryan set his cup on the plate with a subtle blow. Small, but revealing. Marcus and I talked for a few minutes about superficial things, the wedding, the wines, the weather. But the way he looked at me was different. Not like Ryan, not like a game. As if he really saw me. "I hope to see you at tonight's event," he said at the end, getting up. "I would love to talk more about your ideas for the sector." My heart gave a small jump. Not from nerves, but from the unexpected. I nodded, aware of Ryan's gaze fixed on me. "Of course, it will be a pleasure." When Marcus walked away, Ryan spoke in a low voice. "Be careful." "Why?" I asked without looking at him. "Wolves sense weakness." His tone was dry, almost a warning. I looked at him sideways, smiling coldly. "I'm more worried about the wolf I already have at home." His jaw tensed, but he didn't respond, because for the first time at that table of appearances, he understood that I also knew how to play. The afternoon passed between meetings, rehearsed smiles, and family commitments. Ryan and I were the perfect couple. Fake. We walked together. We answered questions together, but our gazes never met for more than 2 seconds. Until I discovered him. It was by chance, or maybe destiny, if you believe in those things. I was passing through the hotel lobby when I heard his voice. Low, quick, nervous. I stopped behind a marble column, invisible to him. He was talking on the phone with his back turned, with his usual arrogant elegance. Dark suit, hair combed with precision. "Yes, Jessica, I promise you. Tonight I'm getting out of here. The limousine will be ready. Just be patient," he said, looking around, making sure no one saw him. My blood boiled, but I wasn't surprised. I knew he was with her. What I didn't expect was the carelessness, that he would risk so early, so openly. I waited for him to finish the call and followed him. He walked down the hallway, thinking himself untouchable, to his room. I waited 2 minutes and knocked on the door. He opened without disguising his annoyance. "What do you want now?" I leaned my shoulder against the frame, amused. "I heard your conversation." His expression changed. He didn't invite me in. He didn't need to. I had control. "How much did you hear?" he asked in a low voice, crossing his arms. "Enough to understand that you continue being an idiot." I crossed my arms like him. Ryan frowned, irritated. "This is none of your business." "On the contrary, Ryan, I'm your wife," I reminded him, raising my eyebrows. "If you go out tonight to meet your mistress, the journalists, your parents, and the whole world will know." "Do you know what that means?" He remained silent. His jaw tensed. That gesture of his so predictable when they cornered him. "What do you want?" He spat, surrendering to the game. I smiled, lowering my voice, savoring each word. "I want a deal. You continue seeing Jessica in secret, and I get power within your family's business." His blue eyes studied me, evaluating. "Power. I want to sit in meetings, give opinions, decide." I took a step toward him. "Not be just the decorative wife." Ryan laughed without humor. "Do you think you can handle this world, Helena? This isn't a fashion show." "You're right, it's much worse," I replied without blinking. "And if I want to survive here, I need weapons." Silence. I could hear his mind working, evaluating the risks. "If you deny me," I continued, "I walk out that door and call the media. I'll tell them everything. The arranged marriage, your hidden girlfriend, the lies. Goodbye reputation, goodbye business." Ryan ran his hand through his hair, exasperated. "You're worse than I imagined." I shrugged, amused. "And you? More predictable than I thought." Finally, he nodded, defeated. "Very well, Helena. A deal is a deal. But be careful. This game has just begun." I turned, satisfied. "For you, Ryan. For me, it was already played from the beginning." I closed the door behind me with the certainty that I had just won the first battle. But the war would be long, and in the end, the Montenegros would pay for every tear my family shed. The charity event was held in an old hall in the city with high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and walls lined in red velvet. The kind of place where everyone pretends charity while measuring ego and power. Ryan and I arrived together, of course. The perfect facade continued. He in an impeccable black tuxedo, dark hair combed back, cold gaze as if nothing mattered to him. Me in a dark blue dress that fell like silk over my body. Discreet neckline, bare back, elegant, impeccable, indecipherable. I knew Jessica would be watching from some dark corner. I knew the Montenegro family wanted to see us united. And I knew that Ryan, although he showed himself indifferent, was playing a game he no longer completely controlled. While the guests talked, glasses clinked, and cameras captured false smiles, I slipped away to the terrace. The cool night air caressed my skin. The city lights twinkled in the distance like fallen stars. "Does it look better natural?" said a masculine voice next to me. I turned and found Marcus. He wore a black tuxedo, white shirt, and dark tie. Tall, athletic build, light brown hair combed casually. His green eyes shone under the moonlight. I smiled without lowering my guard. Do you always say the right thing at the exact moment, or is it a special talent? Only when I'm interested in the person listening, he replied, leaning on the balustrade, relaxed. We remained silent for a few seconds, observing the city. It was strange, but with him, I didn't feel that constant need to measure each word. With Ryan, everything was tension, power games, where. With Marcus, at least for now, just calm. You didn't seem to be enjoying much in there, he commented. Masks are heavy, I admitted, and some know how to use them better than others. Marcus looked at me seriously. They say everything in this marriage is strategy. Business inside. I smiled on the outside, but froze inside. And do you believe everything they say? I don't usually believe rumors, he said without taking his eyes off me. I prefer to see with my own eyes. His honesty disconcerted me. No one in that circle spoke like that. Everyone manipulated, hid, lied. Before I could respond, I felt Ryan's presence behind me. His cologne, his energy, his contained discomfort. Am I interrupting something? He asked with that false courtesy that only he mastered. Marcus didn't get flustered. We were just talking. Good night, Ryan. My husband nodded. But his jaw was tense, his blue eyes sharp. He didn't look at me directly, but his discomfort was evident. They're waiting for you inside, he said. See you inside, Marcus replied, walking toward Ryan. We entered together, but the silence between us said more than 1,000 words. During the rest of the night, I felt Marcus's eyes following me, and although Ryan wouldn't admit it, his too. For the first time, Ryan Montenegro was jealous, and he hated it. The sound of paper crinkles between my hands while my eyes went over each line, each number, each signature. I had spent hours reviewing the documents that, by carelessness or arrogance, Ryan had left in the Montenegro mansion library. Documents of shell companies, obscure money movements, donations that weren't donations. It was a labyrinth of carefully constructed lies. The Montenegro power wasn't sustained only with clean business. No. Behind their perfect facade, there were shadows. And I, the bought wife, was about to illuminate them. When Ryan entered the library, his carefree expression lasted exactly 3 seconds. He found me sitting in the leather armchair with the documents on the table. What the hell are you doing? He asked, closing the door behind him. I got up slowly, without letting go of the papers. Reviewing the family business, I replied, holding his gaze. Ryan frowned. His light gray suit fit perfectly to his tall and athletic figure. Dark hair a little disheveled, no tie, with the first buttons of his shirt unbuttoned. He looked elegant, relaxed, but his blue eyes, cold and sharp, betrayed him. Those documents aren't for you, he said, taking a step forward. I'm your wife, I reminded him. Everything that's yours is mine, or did that only apply to the inheritance? I saw him grit his teeth. He was losing his own game, and it cost him to admit it. You don't know what you're messing with. Helena, he warned. I smiled, amused. On the contrary, I know exactly what I'm messing with, and I know this can destroy the Montenegros and you. Silence. We stood looking at each other, challenging each other, measuring the terrain. His facade of security began to break. For the first time, I saw him vulnerable, human. What do you want? He asked finally. I approached slowly, leaving the documents on the table. Truth, I replied, and power, and for you to stop underestimating me. Ryan sighed, running his hand through his hair. Do you want to enter this world? He asked with a mixture of annoyance and respect. Very well. I warn you, Helena, here no one is innocent. I know, I said without taking my eyes off his. Starting with you. We stayed like that, in that silent duel until Ryan, defeated, nodded. You'll go to meetings. You'll have access to whatever you want, he accepted. But remember, everything you touch can also dirty you. I shrugged, collecting the documents. I'm already married to you, Ryan. There's no going back. When I left the library, I felt something had changed. He had stopped seeing me as a nuisance. Now he saw me as a threat, or maybe as his only real ally. What he still didn't understand was that in this game I didn't intend to lose. And among those papers, I had found exactly what I had been looking for 15 years. Fraudulent contracts, sabotage of competing wineries, bribes to inspectors, and mainly the documents that proved how the Montenegro family deliberately destroyed Vasquez Winery, my family, my life. Now I wasn't just the ignorant trophy wife. I had the dirty secrets of the family and could destroy them whenever I wanted. But first, I wanted Ryan Montenegro to suffer. I wanted him to feel what it was like to lose everything. The storm started when we were still on the road. We were heading to an important meeting with investors on the outskirts of the city. Ryan was driving the impeccable black car, with that serious expression that tattooed itself on his face when he talked about business. I, in the passenger seat, mentally reviewed the names and positions of the people I was going to meet. I had to be ready. I had demanded a place at the table. Now I had to demonstrate that I deserved it. But the storm ruined everything. The rain fell in torrents, the sky gray as lead. Thunder shook the air. In the middle of the road flooded and we were forced to stop at a small, old inn on the roadside. Ryan was annoyed, as always, when he couldn't control the situation. Great, he grumbled, parking the car. Meeting canceled. Day lost. I got out without saying anything. The inn wasn't luxurious, but at least it was dry and warm. The receptionist looked at us with surprise. Few clients arrived on days like this. One room available, she informed. The last one. Ryan and I looked at each other. The same thought crossed our minds, but there was no alternative. We went up in silence. The room was simple. Big bed, thick curtains, an old lamp on the little table. Outside, the rain hit the glass hard. Calm down, Ryan, I joked, taking off my coat and putting it on a chair. I'm not going to attack you while you sleep. He shot me a tired look, taking off his jacket and unbuttoning his shirt. Underneath, his athletic and defined torso was partially visible. I turned discreetly without giving him the pleasure of seeing me uncomfortable. That doesn't worry me, he said, throwing himself on the bed. I took off my heels, sitting on the edge of the bed, leaving space between us. Silence settled, for the first time in a long time. Without witnesses, without masks, without appearances. Why do you hate me so much? I asked suddenly, without planning. Ryan took a while to respond. He sat up, supporting his elbows on his knees, his expression more human than ever. I don't hate you, he said, finally looking at me sideways. I fear you. That disconcerted me. You fear your own wife? Because I can't understand you, he said seriously. And people I can't read worry me. I bit my lip in silence. Maybe for the first time we were talking for real. I fear you too, I admitted. He looked at me surprised. Not for what you can do to me, I clarified, but for what you can make me feel. I hate depending on someone, Ryan. The silence stretched. The rain continued hitting the windows. Life taught me not to trust, I whispered, to protect myself. And now I'm here married to you, trapped in this game. Ryan leaned toward me, not close enough to touch me, but close enough for his cologne to envelop me. Not everything in this is a game, Helena, he said in a low voice. Sometimes people surprise. Our eyes met for the first time without hatred, without masks, just two broken people, trapped in an empty marriage, looking for something real. I don't know how long we stayed like that, but that night we slept side by side, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as two tired souls, sharing a roof and a secret. The following days were different. Not perfect, not magical, but different. Ryan and I still argued, still distrusted, but something invisible, almost imperceptible, had broken between us in that inn room. We understood each other in glances, in silences, even in the disguised pokes of sarcasm. But calm never lasts. I knew the instant I saw Jessica at the Montenegro mansion. She was in the main hall, sitting next to my mother-in-law, as if she were part of the family. She wore a fitted red dress, blonde hair pulled back in an impeccable ponytail, perfect makeup. Her smile was the same as always, sweet on the outside, poisonous inside. I approached calmly, my heels echoing on the marble floor, and each step was a declaration that I wasn't intimidated. "Helena, dear," said my mother-in-law when she saw me. "Look who came to visit us. Jessica is practically family." I felt Jessica's gaze on me, measuring, calculating. "What a pleasant surprise," I replied, smiling without showing my teeth. At that moment, Ryan entered the room. His expression upon seeing Jessica was a poem of discomfort. His blue gaze sought me as if trying to anticipate my reaction. I wasn't going to give him that. "Ryan," Jessica greeted, getting up. "I didn't know you'd be here." "Liar. He came always," he replied, dry but polite. "Jessica lives here." The conversation became an uncomfortable theater, everyone pretending normalcy, except me, who observed in silence like a sharp spectator. Hours later, when Jessica tried to approach me in the garden, I didn't stop her. "I'm surprised you're still here," she said, her honeyed voice hiding the threat. "I thought you would have run away by now." I turned to her, crossing my arms. Sorry to disappoint you. It must be frustrating, I said, smiling. But here I am, and here I stay. Jessica approached one step. Her blue eyes, colder than Ryan's, pierced mine. I know what you do, she whispered. You manipulate, provoke. Don't think you'll get away with it. Get away with it, I laughed. My marriage has already cost enough, but believe me, it will be worth it. Jessica studied me, her mask cracking for a second. Then she left, her cloying perfume floating in the air. That night, Marcus wrote to me. He didn't ask anything. He just invited me to dinner, to get me away from all that circus. And for the first time, I hesitated. Ryan was making me lose control. But Marcus offered calm, admiration, another option. And I was beginning to understand that in this war of loyalties, the price was my own heart. The lights of the hall sparkled as if the ceiling were full of stars. The crystals of the hanging chandeliers shone, the orchestra played an elegant melody, and glasses clinked in the hands of the city's elite. It was the most important event of the year for the Montenegro family, and I, the annoying wife, had to look perfect. My black satin dress fell like water over my body. Subtle neckline, bare back, a minimal diamond necklace adorning my neck. My hair fell in soft waves over my shoulders. I looked calm, but inside I was a contained hurricane. Ryan was impeccable in his tuxedo. Dark hair combed back. Tense jaw. Since Jessica had reappeared, his control had begun to crack, and tonight the crack was going to open. Marcus arrived punctually, tall, elegant, confident. His dark blue suit highlighted his athletic bearing. His green eyes sought me among the crowd, and when he found me, he smiled as if only I existed. Ryan noticed his presence before me. I felt his body tense next to me, his hand on my waist squeezed subtly. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to say anything. Shall we dance? Marcus asked, approaching. Ignoring Ryan's sharp gaze, I nodded, taking his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm envelop mine. The music changed to a waltz, and we left behind the curious looks, the murmurs, the poisonous whispers. While we spun around the hall, Marcus looked into my eyes. I don't understand how you still stay by his side, he said in a low voice. It's complicated, I replied. You don't seem like a woman who accepts complications, he replied, smiling. Before I could respond, the melody ended and the crowd applauded. The dancers switched partners, the custom, the etiquette, the damn protocol. Suddenly, Ryan was in front of me, offering his hand. His blue eyes, full of tension, pierced mine. I accepted, knowing I couldn't avoid it. We plunged into the dance floor, his hand on my waist, his other hand holding mine, the distance between us non-existent. I don't like how he looks at you, Ryan said, his voice grave, his chin tilted toward me. I don't like how you look at Jessica either, I replied without looking at him. His jaw tensed, but he didn't reply. We spun among the crowd. Camera flashes blinking, curious people murmuring. In a corner, Jessica watched us, her expression a mixture of fury and pain. Next time you invite her here, I began. I didn't invite her, he interrupted me, whispering next to my ear. I didn't want her to come. His sincerity disconcerted me. For the first time, he sounded real. The music slowed. The hall plunged into expectant silence. Eyes were on us. Without thinking, Ryan pulled me to him, and in front of everyone, he kissed me. But this time, it wasn't the cold and forced kiss from our wedding. It was real, deep, sincere, confused, loaded with anger, frustration, and something I still didn't want to name. When we separated, the hall exploded in applause, but I could barely breathe. Ryan looked at me, and in his eyes, finally, I didn't see just control. I saw desire, I saw fear, and although I hated to admit it, in my chest I felt the same. The days after the ball were chaos disguised as normalcy. The press talked about us. Photos of the kiss circulated like gunpowder, and in family meetings everyone congratulated us on how in love we seemed. But at home the tension was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Jessica didn't respond to my messages or my public hints until she did. Ryan was in his office, immersed in papers and calls when his phone vibrated. I saw it on his face. The discomfort, the guilt, the internal battle. Jessica, he said in a low voice. He nodded without denying. I didn't say anything. I turned ready to leave him with his conflict, but he got up, going around the desk. I'm going to end this, he said, looking into my eyes. I observed him looking for the deception, the lie. I didn't find it. Ryan left that same night. He didn't ask my permission. He didn't give explanations. He just left. Hours later, the storm exploded. Jessica appeared at the Montenegro mansion door with red eyes from anger and spite, dressed in white as if the drama needed a theatrical touch. The journalists followed her like flies. The Montenegro family tried to contain the scandal, but Jessica was an expert at manipulating cameras and words. "I was the woman of his life for years," she declared, feigning tears. "And now they leave me like a hidden mistress." The press devoured the story. I watched from the window, arms crossed, stomach churning. Not from pity, not for Jessica, but because I knew that if Ryan didn't close this chapter, everything would collapse. That night he returned. He entered drenched by the rain, without his usual arrogance. His dark hair stuck to his forehead, his suit wrinkled, his eyes sincere, tired. "It's over," he said without beating around the bush. "Are you sure?" I asked without moving. He nodded. "I don't want lies. I don't want games. I just want this to work." I knew it cost him to admit it. His pride finally fell. I approached slowly. I studied him, looking for the crack. It was there. Open, real. "Then Ryan," I whispered, "let the truth begin." And for the first time, we allowed ourselves to stop fighting. Just for that night, we lowered our weapons. We slept in the same bed, not as enemies. We slept in the same bed, not as enemies, not as actors, but as two people who finally understood that power was nothing without truth. The following days were different, more sincere, more human. Ryan and I still had our differences, but we no longer played to destroy each other. We learned to coexist in comfortable silence, in glances that needed no explanation. The press, of course, fed on the scandal with Jessica, but in time they got tired. She left, disappeared from the social map, at least for now, and we survived. The Montenegro family, after seeing that Ryan wouldn't yield to pressure or blackmail, accepted my presence. Even my mother-in-law reluctantly began to smile at me with more sincerity, but what I didn't expect was what would come next. Ryan arrived one night with a proposal, a trip. Nothing public, nothing ostentatious, just us. The house was old on the coast, far from the noise, the money, the cameras, the place where supposedly we were going to have our honeymoon if things had been different. We entered together, suitcases in hand. Outside, the sea roared and the salty breeze seeped through the windows. "Why here?" I asked, walking through the wooden hall. The windows faced the sea. Ryan shrugged, leaving the keys on the table. "Because I want to start without lies," he replied, looking at me. I stopped feeling the weight of his words. During dinner, we talked without double meanings, without sarcasm. Just talked. He told me about his childhood, the pressures, the expectations he never asked for. I talked about my fears, how I always felt alone, even surrounded by people. For the first time, we stopped being the Montenegros. We were just Ryan and Helena. When we went up to the room, the tension between us wasn't the same as before. It was no longer a game. It was no longer revenge. He looked at me seriously, but without the pride that had accompanied him since the first day. "I don't want to force you into anything," he said in a low voice. I approached, taking his shirt, pulling him to me. "You don't need to force me," I whispered. We kissed slowly, real, with all the scars, the doubts, and the feelings laid bare on the skin. That night we shared the bed as two people who, against all odds, had chosen to stay. Because we never plan love, but sometimes it grows between the spaces we leave empty. Ryan and I were proof of that, but I still kept my biggest secret. And I knew the day would come when I would have to choose between the revenge I had planned my whole life and the love that grew without permission. 2 years later, the Montenegro mansion was no longer a battlefield. It continued being big, cold in some corners, full of protocols and antiques, but inside things had changed. I walked down the hallway, one hand on my back, the other caressing my protruding belly. 8 months. Sometimes it still cost me to believe it. Ryan was in his office, but when he heard my steps, he came out to the hallway. His expression changed as soon as he saw me. He was no longer the cold and calculating man I met. He was still dominant, but his blue eyes softened when he saw me. "You should be resting," he said, approaching. "I can't sit for more than 10 minutes without feeling like a beached whale," I replied, rolling my eyes. He smiled, that smile that still disarmed me, and surrounded my waist carefully, resting his forehead on mine. "You're beautiful," he whispered. I shook my head, laughing softly. "I'm enormous." "You're the mother of my children," he corrected, lowering his hand to my belly. "Yes, children, because capricious life gifted us not with one, but with 2. The twins would arrive in a few weeks, and although fear was still there, happiness was greater. I looked at Ryan. I thought about everything we had been through. The lies, the masks, the fights, the nights when I believed I would never be able to stand him. And now we were an imperfect, stubborn, complicated, but real team. He took me by the hand to the garden where the family gathered for dinner. The Montenegros had learned to accept, to respect. Even my mother-in-law, with her eternal disguised criticism, melted in care for me since she knew about the pregnancy. Marcus had left long ago, with elegance, with dignity. There was no drama or resentment. He just understood that I chose to stay. Ryan settled me in the chair, taking care of every movement. Sometimes his clumsiness with emotion still appeared, but with each caress, each gesture, he showed me that he tried. And that was worth more than any word. I looked at the horizon, the sunset tinting the sky in golden and pink tones. But there was still one last thing to resolve. That night, when we were alone in the room, I gathered the courage I had been collecting for months. "Ryan," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "I need to tell you something." He stopped taking off his tie and looked at me. "What is it?" I took a deep breath. "My name isn't Helena Vasquez because I married you." His expression froze. "My name is Helena Vasquez because it always was. I'm the daughter of Maria and Carlos Vasquez, the former owners of Vasquez Winery." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan sat slowly on the bed, his face pale. "The winery that your family destroyed 15 years ago?" "Yes." He ran his hands through his hair, the world collapsing on him. "For how long?" "Always. Since before we met. I planned everything. The meeting, the dating, accepting your proposal. Everything." Ryan got up, started pacing around the room. "So none of this was real? Nothing?" "In the beginning, no," I admitted. "I wanted revenge. I wanted to destroy you and your family like you destroyed mine. And now?" I got up with difficulty, approaching him. "Now I choose you. I choose this," I said, pointing to my belly. "I choose love instead of hate." Ryan looked at me, and for a moment I saw everything. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, but also the love that grew despite everything. "Helena." He whispered my name as if it were the first time. "Do you forgive me?" I asked. He remained silent for long minutes. Then he pulled me into his arms. "I forgive you if you forgive me for everything my family did to yours." We embraced, crying, leaving behind 15 years of hate and lies. A week later, Ryan took me to meet the Montenegro patriarch, his grandfather, the man who had ordered the destruction of my family. I found an 85-year-old man, eyes still sharp but frail body. "So you're Carlos's daughter," he said when Ryan revealed my identity. "I am." "I knew," he confessed. "From the first day. You have his eyes." My anger, kept for so many years, exploded. "And you said nothing? You let your grandson marry me knowing who I was?" "I let it happen because I wanted to see what you would do," he said calmly. "If you would come for revenge or justice." "And what's the difference?" "Revenge destroys. Justice builds." The old man got up with difficulty and walked to an old safe. He took out yellowed documents. "These are the original property titles of Vasquez Winery. I never destroyed them. I knew that one day I would need to return them." I took the papers with trembling hands. "After 15 years, my land was returning to me." "Why now?" "Because you proved you're better than me," he said. "You chose to build instead of destroy. That deserves respect." 3 months later, the twins were born, Carlos and Maria, like my parents. And 6 months after that, the patriarch passed away, leaving the inheritance equally divided between Ryan and me. In the will, there was a letter. "To Helena Vasquez Montenegro, you came to destroy us, but instead you saved us. Use this power to be better than us, to build bridges where there were once walls." Today, 5 years later, I run Montenegro Vasquez, the merger of the two families that were once enemies. We transformed the company into an ethical reference in the sector, implementing sustainable practices and making reparations to the wineries harmed in the past. Ryan and I work side by side, combining my technical experience with his business vision. And every year, on the anniversary of my parents' death, we plant new vines in their honor. Looking at the sunset over the vines that now belong to both reunified families, I reflect that although it began with lies and thirst for revenge, I ended up building something greater, a family based on truth, justice, and true love. Ryan approaches from behind, embracing me while our children run among the vines. "Do you regret it?" he asks. "What?" "Having chosen love instead of revenge." I smile, leaning against him. "Never. Revenge would have given me a moment of satisfaction. Love gave me a lifetime of happiness." And it's true. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in destroying your enemies, but in transforming them into family. The wind sways the vine leaves, and I know that my parents, wherever they are, can finally rest in peace. Vasquez Winery lives, and it will live forever.